This week on Rockstar Superhero. Meeting Ian Blurton today is one of those super cool experiences because not only do guys like us vibe on a cellular level, but the man actually writes some of the best songs you'll ever hear. Ian's been around a really long time and it shows in only the best ways. When you kick around the circuit for years, your sincerity cannot be denied, and Ian's music proves his commitment to the craft. The new Future Now record, Second Skin, has been out a number of weeks, and it resonates with fans of old-school, classic melodic rock. Think Cheap Trick and Red Kross, and you might be getting close to what Ian is dishing out. The band makes it happen, and these songs will rule your mind. You gotta trust me on that. So let's just dive in, shall we? This is my interview with Canadian legend Ian Blurton, and this is Future Now on Rockstar Superhero. What I love about you is you're flying the flag, man.
Right. Well, that's I mean, that's what we're trying to do, sort of do something, a little 70s-ish with a little bit of modern twist to it, I guess, and keep I think that we walk on the shoulders of giants and all that kind of stuff. And
for sure,
we have a responsibility to try and be as good. I'm not saying we are as good, but, to be as good as those bands, so
not that I need to correct you because, you're an established guy, but yeah. The fact is you are as good. I mean, look, most musicians, I think anybody worth their salt is certainly good enough to be seen and heard and appreciated. It's just, I don't want to call it the luck of the draw, but it's who's behind you, who's heard you. It's all the little things that have to combine to make the silk, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. No, it has to all line up properly or, it's not going to happen. Basically.
Yeah. It's interesting too, because you've been around a long time. I think I'm a little bit older than you, but you've been around a long time. You're an established artist, people know you all over the planet. You know what I mean? And I think it's such a weird thing, the music business in general, because, the music business is so associated with business, right? The almighty dollar, and the artist is associated with the creation and the birth of these ideas, and ne'er the twain shall meet. You know right, what I mean? Right. It's a brutal thing. How do you handle having been in the business so long? Do you feel like a kind of a crazy person who just kind of sticks it out because you're like kind of hoping something, glues you to somebody's ears somehow? What's your motive? Of course,
there's a little bit of that, but there's also, it's something I've always had to do since I was, incredibly young. So I think that's what I get an extreme amount of enjoyment playing music. It's really fun. I feel like the people I get to play with are just, they're incredible musicians. And, that is the thing. It's just that pure thing of like that feeling of like when I was a kid, when I would hear a new piece of music and I'd get all excited about it. And it's like, I still have that feeling. It's not always been there. There was definitely a period 10 years ago where I was like, but right now and for the last little bit, it's been there. And so, God, if I can feel that, I'm going to take it, because I know a lot of musicians get really bitter. I got bitter, and you just have to. The music is it's there for you if you want it, and if you treat it badly, it's going to treat you badly.
Yeah, it's interesting too, because I love what you're saying there. The bitterness thing is huge, and as often is the sort of the story behind my show is artists are nuts. You know what I mean? We're all completely bonkers, and we all have a different way of sort of dealing with our creative insanity. But yeah, there's something that feels like, I'm not going to get into religion here, but there's something about like this feeling of, why was I created to do this when I'm basically toiling in vain?
Right.
Because it sucks.
Can you please just somebody explain this to me?
Yeah. Why is this training for the afterlife or something? Because this sucks balls.
Right. Yeah.
Oh, I mean, my God.
It's like, I'm, one of my favorite guitar players of all time is this guy, Sonny Chirac. And like he, up until almost when he died, he was pretty much unknown. And like his name isn't even on records he played on and stuff. So I always just look at people like that, or, somebody like Coltrane or Miles Davis or Zappa, who just like all in, like all in.
Yeah.
And I get a lot of inspiration from that. I really do,
Yeah. Yeah. You know what it is, dude? They didn't ever monetize their talent. It just happened. It happened for them. I mean, granted, in a way. I mean, Zappa, probably the most of the three, simply because he was in. Look, I don't want to say Zappa was accessible because he certainly wasn't. Right. But jazz. I mean, look, I'm a big jazz guy. I'm a big anything sort of eccentric or esoteric. I'm down, right?
Yeah, me too. I'm the same way. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think guys like us, we're going to connect because we know how to play a pop groove, but we love a little bit of everything, and it infiltrates our life. But yeah, I think the hardest part is at least for me, and probably for you, because you're Canadian, correct?
Yeah. Well, I was born in the States, but yeah, I'm Canadian.
Right. So I just think of like North America, especially especially the States. There's such a focus here on the fame thing, the celebrity thing. What's come before me, right? The artists from the 70s who we saw throwing TVs out of hotel rooms and riding in Rolls Royces, and that big life and this expectation that our music should that the music will the money will justify the work.
Right.
You know what I mean? And that feels like we deserve it. And I know that sounds a little crazy, but I think, Coltrane and Zappa and Tony Williams and all these killer artists that have since departed this earth, never, ever cared about that. They were pure in a way I am envious of, because I'm such a dork about it. I wish I had made it. You know what I mean?
Right, right. But I don't think they even had time. I don't think they even had time to think about the fame. They were, because they're, all three of those people, even like Tony Williams, everyone played constantly every day. And so it's like, they probably didn't even know, I'm sure they noticed, but the peaks and the valleys of their career were probably not as extreme because they were working constantly,
Yeah.
Like when you stop and you're like in between a cycle and stuff like that. And that's, that I think you notice things more like that then.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really true. Yeah, I'm so glad you said that. Yeah, there's something about the pause, right? Yeah. That's really weirdly, I don't want to call it unhealthy, but it's, if you're a nerd, or actually I don't want to call myself a loser because that sounds awful, but if you're a person like me who gets distracted at a moment's notice, it takes your eyes off the prize, and the prize is the creation itself.
Yes, absolutely.
Right. And
even if it's bad, like just follow through and finish it and then move on to your next thing, right. Because you'll know it's bad, hopefully.
Yeah. Oh, I think that's what inspires me about you too. I mean, you're a fairly new thing in my life, but the beauty is you've been around a long time and you've built this collection of moments of your life, right, through music,
right.
These snapshots. I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No. Yep.
Yeah.
I'm agreeing.
Yeah. And I think that's such a great thing that I look at you, and again, I guess going back to the purity thing, I look at you and I say, oh, here's a guy who's always stuck by his guns. Like, you believe in a sound that, you mix it, like you said, the 70s and modern. To me, I hear like a cross between the 70s and the 90s. It's modern enough to draw me in with some of the tones and some of the, like the compression even of the record.
Right.
But it sounds groovy, right?
Right.
This sounds to me like, I mean, it reminds me of the good old days. I think of Red Kross. I think of April Wine, Cheap Trick, the Posies. I mean, even a little bit of Ozzy, you know?
Oh yeah, for sure. All those things. Posies, maybe not quite so much, but I totally respect their songwriting craft.
Right. But I think that's why it's the songwriting, you know, and they were, of course, they were heavily influenced clearly by Cheap Trick. You know
yeah. I mean, it's hard to be in a heavy, well, at least it's hard for me to be in a heavy band and not be influenced by Cheap Trick, because not only were they drop tuning like way low, like way before a lot of people, the lyrics are dark as hell.
Yeah.
And then they're put together in this beautiful like pop thing, you know, and like that's what I love about them is the shading, you know. It's like, it's not, Cheap Trick is not like a positive lyrical message.
Not even kind of. Like it's a trick. It's a trick. That's why they call it Cheap Trick.
Exactly. It's dark, right? And that's what I love that about music, and I love shading, basically, you know.
Yeah. The bands that candy coat that angst, you know what I mean? That's such a challenge. I was talking to Oliver Chang, who's a Australian dream pop artist. And he was telling me there's this thing. I'm trying to remember what it's called. Not doomcore and not gloomcore. It's something like that. But long story short, it's the aesthetic is dark and creepy, but the music is light. Oh. So it's this, you know, I don't even know if the word juxtaposition is the right word here, but the idea, right? The sort of tonal and melodic argument, right? Like they don't belong together, but you put them together and you say, wow, that's a really beautifully dark thing, if that makes sense.
Right. You know, I don't want to hear this stuff now.
Yeah. I was actually out with him last night shooting a video, and long story short, I played him Jason Blake, who's a guitar player, plays a war guitar. And he's like, oh, this is that stuff I'm talking about, right? So you might want to, if you listen to Jason Blake, you'll know he has a progressive metal band called Aziola Cry. Okay. That I always recommend. I mean, it's very much like a cross between Crimson and early Rush. You know, there's a lot of notes. There's a lot of stuff going on.
Well, I like early Rush. I love King Crimson.
I love Crimson. So check that out. And listeners, check out Jason Blake. He's fantastic. Aziola Cry and all his instrumental works. Anyways, let's talk about Second Skin.
I'm in.
Yeah. So for those who don't know, Ian's latest album came out, I think, a few weeks ago.
Yep, July 15th.
Okay. And we were originally scheduled to, talk over a month ago, but, the internet gremlins made that impossible. So here we are.
I don't know how to work the internet. I don't know how to work computers. So
we're right on the cusp of technologically inefficient.
Yes.
But I mentioned Red Kross, and I know Posey's maybe a little unfair, but for me, because of the whole Cheap Trick thing and the Ozzy thing, I love those bands that sneak in with a little bit too much melody, but they're belying the darkness underneath too. But this record, man, is a killer mix of all the sounds I grew up with. I mean, I would call them, the best harmonies of my life, and it's. I've heard the record. It's a perfect melodic thing. And I really love it. And I'm curious, I don't want to necessarily talk about the influence thing, but I'm wondering if comparisons to those past bands, the perceptions of somebody like me who says, oh, it sounds like, again, Ozzy or Cheap Trick. Does that frustrate you when people compare you to, the heavies of the past?
Oh God, no! Like I'd rather be compared to that than something else. I mean, God, it could go really bad. And sure. I should say it's a lot of this influence is Big Star as well. Like they're another dark band. That's for me, that's I love Big Star, especially the Chris Bell era, like the first record.
Yeah.
But no, that does not frustrate me at all. Anything that can help people maybe understand what the record's about, I'm all for it. You know, especially, I mean, we live in a world where, you know, hundreds of records, maybe even thousands of records come out every week. So it's like anything that can help is good.
Yeah. I think that's why it pops too, Ian, because those thousands of records are all, I mean, I don't want to knock everybody, but there's a tremendous amount of derivative bullshit that's happening, you know, and I blame YouTube, of course, because content, right? Everything is the 10-second soundbite, the snippet, you know, the attack of predictability, you know?
Right.
And people could maybe even accuse you of predictability, but you've taken the badass predictability and turned it on its ear. And that's what I love about it, you know?
Cool. Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, a lot of like, especially production on records these days, you know, people using the same drum samples over and over again and auto-tuning the vocals and things like that. Like we didn't do any of that. What's that?
Every album is so damn loud.
So loud. And it's like the record A doesn't have to be that loud. We don't have to use the same drum samples on every record. You know, you don't auto-tune all the vocals. People like it when the vocals are like a little bit, you know, weird. And you know, I mean, it's just like we're taking all the human elements out of it and replacing it with something that's not necessarily better, you know?
Yeah. You know, if I may, are you familiar with Vancouver's Limblifter?
Oh, yeah. I was actually in Limblifter for two shows.
No.
Well, I was.
Really?
Yes, I was. Yeah.
What? Okay.
It was a long time ago. Probably 25 years ago. Maybe, God, longer than that.
Right. Well, like in the mid 90s, right after Kurt and Ryan started it, basically.
Yeah.
Right. After Age of Electric.
Yes.
Like, okay. That makes a lot of sense. So, well, it's interesting you say this because, you know, I'm not really close to Ryan. I've known him for 20 years now, but I remember talking to him about his 2004 release, I.O., you know, In Out. And all he kept saying was, I am so tired of clinical technical records. I want a live, pure, unfiltered, inefficient, you know what I mean? Imperfect record.
Yeah.
And it's so funny because I didn't know this in my research, so I apologize for missing it, but
no, it's totally fine.
They are a band that really, really hits me in the core. That's a band I love to death. They can do no wrong to me. And in fact, the very first thing I thought of when I heard your record was Limblifter. Not that it sounds like it, but there's something about the ethos of it.
Oh, interesting.
Right. And so here you are, this guy who was a part of it for a period, and I didn't. And it's funny how that stuff sneaks through the cracks, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Right. But, you know, also Canada is very small. And even though they live in Vancouver, which is near Seattle, and I'm way on the other side, it's like it's still so small that it's like, well, we need a guitar player for these shows. Will you do this? Yes.
Yeah. Where are you at?
I'm in Toronto.
You are in Toronto. Okay. I've been so fortunate to meet so many great bands from Toronto recently. So that's awesome.
There are a lot of great bands here.
There are. There really are. I kind of hate the influence question, but I know my listeners always expect me to ask it. But I guess what I would say is maybe instead of asking influences, and feel free to tell me if you want to, but what was the sound you were shooting for on this record? Was there a certain vibe you were going for?
Yeah, well, we recorded the record at this place called the National Music Center in Calgary, and it's a museum on one side and a recording studio on the other side, and they have the Rolling Stones mobile there, which is what the Stones built so they could go record in houses all over in the countryside, and they made Exile on it, and wow. You know, Led Zeppelin 3 and 4 were recorded on it, Machine Head, wow. Deep Purple was recorded on it. So it's like they have this historical thing there, and they have an artist in residence program. Sorry, this is going to be long, but they have an artist in residence program, and we applied with the idea of like, how about having a rock band record on the Rolling Stones mobile? Because, you know, it hadn't really happened yet since they had got it. So, and part of that is they have a huge collection of instruments and you get to choose a bunch. And I was like, oh, I really want a Mellotron for the session. And so that really ended up influencing the record, because obviously, you know, we wanted to have like not a King Crimson part, but a King Crimson type part. And it just sort of expanded a lot of the songs. And so there's 4 songs that are like 7 minutes long. And that's because we were actually going to that studio. I don't think the record would have been the same if we had done it somewhere else. The writing maybe might not have been as more progressive, you know? Yeah. So I think this instance, the surroundings really, you know, influenced where we were headed.
Yeah, that's so cool. I love the sound of a Mellotron. A lot of people don't, of course, really know what they are, but imagine them as basically early samplers with tape loops is what I tell everybody.
Yeah, like
what they are.
Every key has its own tape, and it lasts about 8 seconds. And so if you want that note to keep going, you have to like hit it really hard again and, you know, fast again. And it's just a fantastic instrument. It's, you know, it's like what you hear on King Crimson and Moody Blues and, you know, just tons and tons of stuff.
Right. Like that opening string section in Starless is an example.
Yeah, exactly. There you go. There's a great example.
Yeah. Probably the most famous example.
Yes.
You know, I kind of want to talk about Canada, if that's okay.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So I'm 56 years old, and when I was growing up, I was an instant fan of April Wine. I love April Wine to this day. I think Harder Faster is one of the greatest albums ever. I lose my mind. And speaking of King Crimson, right? They do 21st Century Schizoid, man. And they do a badass version of that.
They do a blistering version of it, actually. I saw them like 4 years ago, and they did a blistering version of it that night.
Yeah. Oh my God. I've never seen them live. I would kill it. Anyway, obviously it's changed, and I can't remember the drummer's name all of a sudden, but he's
Jerry Mercer. He's a god up here.
Yeah. He's like 82 years old.
Yeah. He retired. He was also in a fantastic band called the Mandela before April Wine. I believe they were called Mandela. Oh, whatever.
Yeah, I mean, he was like 40 when April Wine broke, which is just crazy because back then it was like the whole Def Leppard thing. You had to be 16 years old to like break in the music business.
Right.
But you know what I despised, I was raised on the border of Canada, so I think that's probably why I got that sweet spot. But yeah, I despise the fact that Canadian bands really have never gotten the love in the States, even though they're literally, just a notch over the border.
Right.
And I guess I understand it in the sense of, well, we have our market here and you have your market there. And a lot of that's bullcrap on top of it. But, you know, when I look at that and I think of April Wine and Harder, Faster, specifically with, I Like to Rock, I was always frustrated that something like that didn't break bigger. And, I'm curious, what do you find challenging about the American music market compared to everywhere else in the world? Because it seems to me that everywhere else seems to have all the great music.
It's like, come on in. And then America's got it's funny because American bands can get over the border way easier than Canadian bands can go the other way. Like, it's ridiculous. It costs us thousands of dollars now to go over.
Yeah. Crazy.
And, obviously if you're a new band starting out and you're making $100 a show, that's just, that's not going to fly, it's
impossible.
Makes it really hard. Yeah. I mean, the classic example of, what you're talking about is there's a band, I don't know if you know Max Webster, but they opened for Rush for years in the US and couldn't get anywhere. They were just like a little bit too weird, and they're one of my favorite bands actually. And it's just always shocking that they had such great songs and they had such a hard time,
Right. Yeah, I don't know what it is, man. My joke was Rush is a Canadian band and Mahogany Rush is the Canadian version of Rush.
Although Mahogany Rush, they had their time there, the Day on the Green stuff, and they were a big band,
Right. But you know what I mean? It's just unfair that and I don't know, nowadays it's impossible anyway because there's way too much content. It's like if you're not dropping thousands, tens of thousands of dollars on PR. Nobody's going to hear your stuff. What's the word I'm looking for? But you know, when you hear things because your buddy, the organic, that's what I'm thinking of.
Yeah.
Organics are freaking impossible nowadays. I mean,
right.
it sucks. How do you get people to? How do you find your way? I mean, I discovered you through PR. So, I mean, how are you getting your record out?
Just the normal channels, and just trying to be as proactive as possible, and try, if somebody asks for something, try and help them, I see a lot of like hesitance on people's parts to do that kind of thing. It kind of blows me away to spend like 3 years on a record, and then, once the record comes out, to just have it fall apart. It seems odd to me. Why would you put all that energy into something?
I think it's because, going back to the crazy thing, I think musicians we kind of love to be self-defeated. I know that sounds insanity, but I think there's this,
true.
Right? We put it out and we go, oh, well, I guess nobody liked it.
For me.
Yeah, you should feel sorry for me, and maybe I'll take my negative juice and write an epic song because I'm finally pissed off enough.
Right.
Oh my God. So with that being the case, one of my favorite questions, right, is being a musician. I mean, you were born a musician, and then you develop into an exceptional musician through hard work and, effort. Is it all passion? Is it all curse? Is it a little bit of both? Like, how do you deal with being a musician in a world that tends not to care about us?
I don't know. I feel like I get a lot of love, so I maybe I'm wrong, and maybe I'm delusional.
No, that's
maybe
you.
That's part of it, but
you.
It's like I feel like that there's enough there that it makes it worthwhile, and like I said, I enjoy I look forward to going and jamming with the band I'm in right now, because everyone is like, they're awesome, and we have fun jams, and that's music for me. Like, obviously it's everything else too, but like the fun part of it is like a big part of it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Second Skin, I'm going to keep hitting on that because it's such a good record.
Well, this is how we promote records. So.
Yeah. But it's really, it's all the things. I don't know if I can really praise it anymore, because it's just this beautiful concoction of all the things that to me, everybody should love. Like, it needs to be heard because it deserves to pop in a way that's like, I wish you had created it in 1978, right? You know what I mean? When you had a chance.
Some of my favorite records. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just going. Yeah, I know it goes back to that unfair thing, but I mean. So with the personal legacy that you bring to the music business, you've been around a long time, and you're influenced by all these other great bands, and you're writing all this great material. I mean, do you look at this record as the best work you've ever done?
I actually think the record I'm working on right now is the best record I've ever done.
Gotcha. Wow.
And I kind of always feel that way, because I finish a record and then I generally sort of like pick it apart and like go like, this worked, this didn't work, right. That kind of thing. So I feel like, hopefully the next record is always going to be the better one,
Yeah, I think everybody feels that way, but isn't it sad that, you take a band, going back to Rush as an example, you get in their heyday, right? 74 to say 84. Right. And not knocking, of course, the later records. It's funny. I'm calling Presto a later record, but right. It's 1990. It's like, oh, that's 32 years ago. That's later era Rush. But let's face it. The first 10 years were king. That was their moment. And the stuff after that, with a few very small exceptions, really didn't work. I mean, to me.
Right.
And honestly, I think to the audience, I think they became a legacy band really early. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like they had their hits in a big pile, and then that was it, and then they played them for 35 years.
Right. Although very, very strong last record, I must say. Like that,
Yes.
you know, I haven't listened to it like tons or anything, but that last record's pretty damn strong.
Yeah. It's so funny because I don't remember what I was going to say about it, but but I think it's a weird thing that bands, you know, of course, we're all musicians. We're evolving as creative people, and that whole 10,000 hours becomes 30,000, 40,000 hours, and we become really, really efficient and, you know, good and very centered, and we know how to really craft a tight nugget.
Right.
And yet nobody seems to care. It's the strangest thing. And I'm not trying to be negative. I love that, you know, you just released this record and you're like, yeah, Rob, but the next one is going to kill. So when do you expect to put that out? I mean, you just dropped this one 2 weeks ago, man.
Hopefully really, really soon, you know, hopefully within the next year. Yeah. I mean, we want to tour most of next year. If anyone wants to book us,
I do.
Yeah, we want to tour most of next year. So I think it'll, you know, once the record comes out, then we'll start hit the road.
Yeah. And hopefully COVID or something like it will be, you know, is clearly in the rear view. You know, we just don't need more crap. Once a century is enough for a pandemic, I think.
Yeah, it's like, you know, it's supposed to happen on the 12th, right? You know, you're moving past it.
Yeah. Well, so you think this is the best work you've ever done. What do you think? Just curious now. What do you think is missing from Second Skin? Because God dang, it just hits me so hard.
A little bit of over singing on my part.
Over singing.
It's not what's missing. It's what there is maybe a little bit too much of. And the reason I say that is because now we're in rehearsals. We have a show coming up on Saturday, August 13th at the Horseshoe in Toronto. And man, it's a lot of singing. It's a lot of words to remember.
Yeah, there is a lot going on, but I mean, I don't know. Maybe that's what's so catchy to me is I don't think I've heard anything like that in a really long time. Like nowadays, it's all about the riff, and it's all about the breakdown, and it's got all about the anger. It's, you know, it's like a metalcore world right now.
Right.
You know,
yeah, like there's not influenced by that at all. Like absolutely none of it. So I don't know. Like the simplest, I think the idea of Second Skin was just to kind of like chuck as much in there, you know, and we eliminated a lot in the mix too as well. But the idea was to just, you know, try and make it pretty over the top and bring that sort of prog element forward, you know, like even though it doesn't sound like, you know, Nectar or any of the like 70s prog bands per se.
Thank God.
I like it.
Look, it's Camel.
Yeah. You know, I do like some of that stuff.
Yeah.
But I guess that was the influence of that. The prog was just the too much stuff, you know?
Right. Well, there's the noodly prog, which, you know, clearly has nothing to do with, you know, what you do, right?
No, definitely not. Like we're looking for like a more like, what if the Damned were a prog band, or you know, or something like some kind of weird juxtaposition of that, you know?
Well, there's attitude in what you do,
right?
You know,
I think that's important.
Yeah. And what I like about your stuff, and I always like to touch on this too, but what I love about your stuff, and maybe I'm wrong, I could be very wrong, because I tend not to. So as a rhythm player, I'm listening to the drums and the bass and the guitars, and, you know, yes, I'm listening to the melodies and I'm listening to the arrangement and I'm listening to what attracts me to the music, but I'm not necessarily down with lyrics. I know that sounds awful, but I'm
actually very, very similar.
Right. And so to me, some bands, you know, you take the U2s that are out there that are all about social commentary, social justice, all these other things. And then you take bands like, I don't know, The Darkness or you know, name a punk band or a pop band, right? Or Anthrax even, right? That are just about goofy entertainment.
Right.
where do you place Future now? Are you somewhere square in the middle? I mean, do you even give a crap about, should music be social commentary, or is it just about entertainment?
There's definitely social commentary on the record. I mean, because I generally write about, what I see and what I know. And, it's like, I live in Toronto, so right. I write about that a lot. And, we're just talking about basic human things here. We're like housing and where are we going to put everyone? How are we feeding everyone? Just these kind of things. Right. And I don't even consider it political. It's just like a human approach, and
we love each other better.
Yeah. And, I appreciate both bands, but both sides of that. But the one thing that we were trying to do is for every, technical part, just on the music side, we tried to have a really dumb part as well. And it was and when the dumb parts came, it's play that part as dumb as possible just to offset the other part,
That's great. Now, when you say as dumb as possible, is that more
Bud Rock, Kiss or BTO or something
right. Okay, I had a feeling that's where you're going, and not necessarily hey, let's really perform this in an awful way.
No, more like just simplify it to the point of as much, distill it down to the smallest it can be,
Yeah. Well, it's funny looking back. I remember as a kid, of course, like every kid in the world in 1976, Kiss was king.
Yeah.
And it's so funny because in 1995, I had a band here in Seattle that, we went and we competed in one of those radio battle of the band things. And, and I remember after the show, we had a really good showing. Things went really well. And for some reason, I don't know why I remember this, but I was talking with my guitar player and he said, Kiss I think it was Kiss was coming to town because, they'd reformed with,
right.
Peter Criss and he said we should go to see Kiss, and I'm like, yeah man, I've never seen Kiss, that's got to be a blast. And he's like, they play the worst music ever. And I'm like, they do? It hadn't ever really occurred to me how sort of butt rocky and stupid it was.
Right.
And then I went back and listened to Strutter and the early stuff specifically, know, but even songs like Love Gun, I'm like, how trite and silly everything is. The music is silly, the lyrics are silly, everything is horny.
Right. Yeah. Oh, very horny. Very horny.
I was kind of embarrassed to admit I ever liked Kiss after that. And here I was at the time, I was 29 years old going, what? Kiss sucks? You know what I mean? Oh my God.
And they have the worst side ones of almost any, but I always find that because for me, all the best songs are always on side 2. I don't know why. It's who did that? Obviously the first record has lots of good songs on the side 1 because it's, basically their repertoire that they're still playing.
Yeah.
But it's bizarre, the sequencing.
Yeah.
But you read about them though, and the marketing firm that was taking care of them, was naming the albums and Destroyer was almost called Dynasty, and that's 4 years later, and it's oh my God, it's it's just wild.
Yeah, Destroyer was the one. I mean, duh, we all know this. It was the one that that broke them. But I don't know what it was. What it was about them. It was probably just the big atmosphere. The insanity of the big show.
Mm-hmm. And also the big show that wasn't too big at that point. Still, it was to me, I like it when they're everything's held together with gaffer tape and the whole stage is black and that time
Ace is getting electrocuted.
Yeah, that time period to me is that's what I like. It's I'm not a later fan.
Yeah, no, same. It's same example. There's the band that had a 5-year run of being awesome and then they just sucked.
Yeah. Yeah. There's so many bands like that too. It's just you gotta wonder what happened,
Yeah. Well, I mean, it makes sense when the Who, when Keith dies or Zeppelin, or Zeppelin even stops, right? I mean, it makes sense.
I mean, Zeppelin did it right. Let's be real here. Out of all those bands, Zeppelin was that's it, we're done. And look at the legacy they have now. It hasn't been tarnished.
Nope. No,
You know, it's
it's
amazing.
still amazing. It's
A couple
still
of weird
amazing.
shows here and there, but you know, whatever, more or less.
Yeah, true. I got a few more questions for you if I can before I let you go. I don't want to keep you all day, but
no rush.
You're a fantastic guy. What do you see, you know, having been in the business a while and you got the stuff you keep writing, what's the most fulfilling aspect? You know, what turns your crank? Why are you a musician?
Oh, I mean, just playing, noodling on a guitar is like, God, I love it. I just love it. Like I don't know what it is. Like I was a drummer first too. And, I switched over to guitar at 16 when I started playing live. Basically, I had been playing guitar for like 3 months. And just ever since then, guitar has been like, I don't know, I just obsess over it. Stupid crap. Like, oh, what does this cable sound like versus this cable? And like, you know, just like whatever, but I just love it. I love it. And just getting closer to tapping into the power of what I'm looking for out of a sound is like, I'm a little obsessive about it.
Yeah. I think the greatest musicians have that intrinsic joy. It's just built in, you know, and I'm not saying they should be obsessive, but I think, you know, I don't even want to say the best musicians because that's unfair. It's obviously, you know, up to the you know, the listener to decide what's best, right? Whether it's technical or really sloppy, but if it kicks, it kicks. You know?
Yeah, exactly. Like, you know, practicing 10 hours a day isn't going to help you tap into the mojo that makes people
the White Stripes prove it.
Yeah. Oh, like, I mean, you know, like there's so many examples of like, even like, you know, the people say like, for example, like the drummer is the engine of the band. And if you don't have a good drummer, your band is, well, don't forget about the drummer that is terrible, has terrible technique, has incredible ideas.
Who has terrible technique?
So who has, you know, drummers who have like terrible technique and stuff, but they have the best ideas.
Yeah.
And like, you can't, you know, like, and sometimes like because I record records for a living and it's like, you get the drummer, it doesn't sound good, but the ideas are great. So you just have to forget about the sound and go after the idea, which is like, it blows me away. I love that.
Yeah. It's interesting. That was the hardest thing for me as a musician to overcome because there was this sort of, I mean, it was unintentional, but I had this just massive arrogance over, well, if you don't have technique, you suck. And if you suck, I don't want to listen to you. Like, I'm not going to get behind you because I'm working my ass off so I can be a badass.
Right.
And, right. Like I hated the fact that, I mean, I'm not going to lie. I hated the fact that Meg White thrived clearly not being, I mean, remotely a good drummer.
Right.
But you know, my buddy Evan, who's a killer drummer, played in Sad Happy, did some stuff with Michael Manring and you know, Jeff Tate from Queensryche. And he's like, yeah, but Rob, I mean, Meg was perfect for the White Stripes. I mean,
exactly. Yeah,
you got to kind of shut up and just take it where it comes because good is good, but it's still subjective. And the bottom line is, man, Seven Nation Army kicks ass partly because Meg has this weird flow.
Yeah, and like sometimes just kick drum. It's like, you know, like I try and still that. I mean, there are so many drum hooks in what she's doing. It's incredible.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it still pisses me
and
off.
Also, like, can you imagine like Kenny Aronoff or somebody like that in the White Stripes? It'd be like, oh my God,
yeah,
this is the worst band I've ever heard in my life.
Yeah, yeah. I can tell you, all you have to do is go to a karaoke bar where they're playing Seven Nation Army, and when you hear it in perfect like 140 BPM,
right, where
the drums are right on the money, you're like, this doesn't feel right.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's like when they, you know, like those YouTube videos where they grid out a song, and like I remember watching one of a Hendrix tune, and it was just like you can't even grid the thing out. It's just all like feel like he's pushing off the vocal, the drums are pulling and pushing, and like I think it was Wind Cries Mary, and it's like, oh, does that song sound bad? I don't think so.
Yeah. Oh man. So something I'm curious before I let you go, you know, most musicians like you, and you know, I don't want to lump myself in with you, but
do it.
People like us.
Yeah, there you go.
We love music. You know, we're passionate about it. It's just who we are. It's in our DNA.
Mm-hmm.
And for most of us, I think that starts really, really young. Like our parents almost, they either get behind it or they try to push us away from it, but there's no stopping us.
Right.
I'd love to know a little, just before I let you go, just a little history. What was little Ian doing? Were you started on drums? Were your parents like, here's a little drum set? How did it happen?
Yeah, actually, yeah. I mean, honestly, some of my first memories are music related. I'm the same age as you, and
Okay.
I grew up in Ohio, and like the Monkees reruns had just started.
Oh yeah,
and,
yeah.
And the Banana Splits.
Oh my God. Before you said anything, I was like, the Banana Split is in my head. I was like,
right.
it's all Sid and Marty Krofft stuff.
Yeah,
it's all
that.
It's all the bad Sherwood Schwartz stuff, like Brady Bunch and Gilligan's Island, and
and they all had bands on them. The Archies, the Partridge Family, the Osmonds, like Sonny and Cher show, like all that stuff. But my mom has this very vivid memory of me, and I'm 5, and I've got my sister's skipping rope, and I've taken one of the plastic ends off, and I've stuck it down the drain in the kitchen, and I'm like singing like it's like I'm fronting a band. So I think it was just always there. I had a terrible time in school because of it. Just because I wanted to play all the time, and like I started playing when I was 16. Basically, sort of quit high school, and that was it.
Wow. So were you one of those kids, like when you would go on a family vacation, as soon as you got home, you're like, "Where's my drums? I gotta play."
That, and also if we were on vacation, that sort of started my obsession with buying records and like from weirder places and realizing that, oh God, this record that I see, and I'm just going to say Orlando, I might not be able to find this in Toronto. So it's like, that made me realize that world is very large too.
Yeah. So I guess the last thing I would tell you is I would love to know a secret record. And before you say anything, I want to tell you sort of what I mean.
Okay.
In 1975, I was obsessed with A Fifth of Beethoven, the song, the disco song. Right. And I loved it so much. And I told my mom, like, if there's any way Christmas happens, like that's the record I want. That's the LP. And Christmas morning comes, and there's 2 LPs sitting under the Christmas tree. The Bay City Rollers.
If it was the first record, it was good.
It was the first record, but the Bay City Rollers and Electric Light Orchestra, and it was ELO 2, I think, the one with Rollover Beethoven.
Oh, right on.
Now here's what's crazy. I was so upset because it wasn't the Fifth of Beethoven. It was like, to me, I was getting the second class version of something, right? Because I didn't know who ELO was, and I was 9 years old, man. It wasn't, you know what I mean? And I put it on the record player, and I had a drum set in my room, and my dad had wired. It's so cool. My dad had wired our stereo system from the living room into my bedroom, so I would plug in headphones and then go down and play all with the record. I would just play.
How awesome is that?
My dad and mom were very, into it.
Right on.
I sat down behind, and played along with ELO's record. And I discovered all those deep cuts, right? Weird stuff like Kiyama. I mean, in fact, the lyrics, Kiyama, I just blew their heads open. I heard them scream in their agony. Kiyama, she waits there for me.
Right.
And, my parents had no idea. They had just completely damaged me forever.
Right.
But what happened is the following year I got the Hudson brothers record, Boffo.
Speaking of another musical show, yeah,
correct. Because it made me think of it, right? Which is where I'm going with this. So here's the point: that record was produced by Gus Dudgeon and Bernie Taupin and Elton John.
Oh,
and most people don't know that.
Huh.
And And that has to be the best record of the 70s. I love that record so much. And it's probably simply because I grew, it was one of those records in my collection. I grew up with it.
Right.
But that's my secret sauce record. And I hear songs like School Year or, you know what I mean? It doesn't matter. Rendezvous, whatever. That album is a mind blower to me. And I'll listen to it, I'll cry because it just brings back such great memories.
Right.
What's the record that just kills you because you just love it? You're full of joy and it's a secret. Like most people don't know it exists.
Well, I think for me, I had a similar experience where I have two older sisters and one of them was into Bebop Deluxe.
Oh,
and wow. I got Sunburst Finish, I think, God, 1976 or something.
Yeah.
And it has been my favorite record, or at least one of my favorite records the entire time. Doesn't matter what kind of music I'm into at the time. It's a record that I can always come back to. I love the production. Bill Nelson, I don't know if you know who Bebop Deluxe are or not, but Bill Nelson is one of the best guitar players from the 70s, period. Hands down. The guy is just incredible. And like as an Ebo player, he became more of an Ebo player in the 80s, but like just phenomenal guitar player. And I love that band. It's like, for me, it's the perfect combo of like a whole bunch of different things.
Yeah. Man, it's almost, and I almost want to say like the Ebo for him evolved into starting, if I remember correctly, and I could be totally winging it here, but remember when Roland came out with their first digital guitar? It was like a MIDI guitar, like in 85, 86.
Yeah.
And he, I think, was like one of the early adopters of that because similar to Fripp and the whole Frippertronics thing,
right?
They were trying to reinvent the guitar because why not? They were brilliant players.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah.
And in the hands of those two people, like fantastic, obviously. Yeah.
Yeah. So word to the wise listeners, Ian and Rob know what we're talking about. You go get those records now and then comment below. Oh man, Ian, I've had so much fun today. I appreciate this so much. And this record.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Thanks for taking a chance and coming back for part 2. And
my pleasure.
Yeah, making this badass. Will we see you in the States somehow?
I'm hoping obviously hoping next year. We'll see how it pans out. But yeah, I would love to. I haven't played the States in, God, a long time.
Yeah, but Vancouver maybe?
Yes, Vancouver for sure.
Okay, yeah, so 100%. I'm going to keep track of you, and I tell my listeners to do the same. Keep track of Ian Blurton's future now because it's such good stuff. You got to buy this new record. Second Skin is just absolutely phenomenal. Not blowing smoke. It's phenomenal. I got my eyes closed. It's so phenomenal. and if you're anywhere near the Canadian border like I am, get your visa and go see the band.
Yes.
Because I'll come to Vancouver to see you, man. I'd love to shake your hand and just listen to it and just receive it right up front. So
right on.
I think this is awesome, man. So thanks for being here, brother.
Thank you so much. Have a great day.